Yontif, L'Shana Tova. I'm unaccustomed to all of these positionings of microphones and screens and so on. And I'm not quite certain that I know how to engage the hybrid crowd quite so well. But I'll do my best. I assume if I continue to do this and rotate, that somehow I will have gained everybody's attention. You'll think that I'm looking right at you. Although without my glasses, I dare say I can't really see what it is that is in front of me. I can't see other than all of the Hollywood squares that are here and there and here, and the camera is there. My glasses are sitting over there, but I don't need them because the text is not in my glasses and the text is not in front of me. The text in some ways is just here before me. And you heard me begin to sound its notes and articulate its command over us and its invitation to us just a few moments ago. And I'd like to do it again. And as I did last time, I will face away from the kahal. I don't want you to be within the spread of the spray or whatever it is that might be, nor do I really want to cover up the end of the shofar. But I would like you to hear it again. And then I'm going to remind you of something that I said last year about Maimonides and the way in which he imagined the sound of the shofar. I emphasize again, as I did last year, that imagination is not normally considered artistic, literary imagination or artistic imagination of that sort is not normally considered to be part of what Maimonides offers us. Rather, precision and measurement and a kind of elegance that's Bach-like, that's fugue-like, that is in the concision of words. But flights of fancy, no. However, he hears the shofar. Whether he hears it high or low or warbling, doesn't matter. Whether he hears it from a great big horn like this, didn't I say that once already? Or whether he hears it from a smaller horn that has a more nasal quality to it, makes no difference. The shofar summons, the shofar invites, the shofar insists. And he says to us, despite the fact that the shofar is a decree from the heaven, a decree in the Torah, it says, you will sound the shofar on the new year. It never tells us how we're supposed to sound it or under what circumstances. It never tells us what notes there are. It never tells us what length or what values there are. These are all of the imagination of the sages who come before him. They hear weeping and wailing, that much they'll tell us. But weeping and wailing that's translated into Tekiah, Shvarim, Truah, that much they will tell us. But Maimonides, being the inheritor of that legacy, wants to tell us even more. And he says that the shofar, when it is sounded, says, wake up! Wake up! Wake up! Wake up! You're sleeping. You're cobwebby. You're falling prey to Hevlei Hazman, to the Hevel, to the vanity, to the trivialities of time. And it's a shame, and it's a waste, and it is not in the spirit of the shofar. Wake up and turn your attention to what the shofar summons when it summons you to teshuvah. Maimonides uses that language of hevlei hazman, the trivialities of time, only once more in all of the many volumes, 13 volumes of the code to Jewish law. He uses it only one more time. And that's when he's speaking about the doorway, when he's speaking about the mezuzah. He says then, be very careful about the mitzvah of the mezuzah in the doorway, in Hilchot Mezuzah. Be very careful about it, because when you approach it, you are approaching Yichudo Shel Olam. You are approaching the oneness of the world. The oneness, time and space are going away. When you are at a doorway, you are at the portal. Those of you who are on Zoom, maybe you can see your doorways from where you are, or a doorway, maybe not to the house, but maybe to another room. And I invite you to meditate on it for a moment and to think about it, just like people here. What's the difference that is cut between one space and another by the doorway? How about this doorway? I'm turning away from the mic for a moment, so I'm going to take the mic with me. What about this doorway? This is in the world of the sages, this is a petach. In the world of the Torah, it's a petach. Hakihilu et kol ha'am befetach ohel moed. Gather. Is that inside or out? That's outside. Okay. That's real thunder. Sager, you're good, but. If you want to hear that as being a response, I would be honored. You take that story home with you. But this is a petach. Hakilu et kol ha'am befetach ohel moed. Gather all of the people into the gate of the tent of meeting, into the opening, into the doorway of the tent of meeting. Say the rabbis, what do you mean gather all of the people? There's 600,000 people out there in the wilderness, and that's just counting the men. How are you going to gather them all into that space? And they remain perplexed for just a moment until one of them says, oh, this is one of those oddities in the world where the little contains the much. And he will then continue to give us all kinds of examples of the little that contains the much. In each example, he is going to reveal to us that doors have soul. They have our souls. And that all of us are gathered into the doorway. We're all there, peering into the holy place or peering out of the holy place. We're all gathered there. It is our doorway. I dare to say, and for the purpose of these thoughts, I say that there is only one doorway. You might think it's in your house, Zoomers or boomers. You might, or others, you might think it's in your house, and you'd be right. It's in your house, and it's also in my house, and all of us are gathered there. And the world has conspired to make us want to gather the strength and stories of all of our ancestors who have stood and still stand with us in the doorway, standing there with us because we cannot bear or sustain ourselves with the loneliness that comes with being merely contemporary. Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakaneh in the Mishnah will demonstrate something that his students have never seen before. He will stop at the doorway on the way into the Beit Midrash and be silent for a moment and say a prayer. And then on his way out of the Beit Midrash, he will stop on the inside of the Beit Midrash before moving out and be silent and offer a prayer. And his students and disciples will say to him, Ma makom tefillah zo? What's the place of this prayer? And because they've never seen it before. It's not found to be found in any Siddur. He prays for going in so that he can do his job. He prays for going out so that he can be thankful for having done his job. The text is not important. The story is important. The doorway is important. He knows that it has soul and that he needs to conduct himself one way inside and one way outside. The difference between inside and outside is also part of our legacy. And we live it just like we live Nechunya's legacy now when we come back home. When we come into the house, what do? We think about taking off the mask, washing our hands, preparing ourselves for being inside. We do so wearily because we really thought we were past it, but we're not. And so Nechunya ben Hakaneh will help us. His example will strengthen us. Come inside, wash your hands, go outside, put on your mask. Stop by the doorway. Stop biyichudo shel olam. Stop in that place which is neither in nor out, where the oneness prevails. Stop there and follow the leader, follow the muscle, follow the heart, follow the soul of Nechunya ben Hakaneh. Sometimes we don't know how to make the difference between inside and outside. Or maybe one's safer than the other. Does someone in the house have COVID? Is it possible that the outside is safer than the inside? And we stand in that crowded doorway with our ancestors in ancient Egypt, whom their descendants, the sages who are my heroes, will remind us they didn't know which side to paint. When God said paint blood on the door, they didn't know. They put it on the outside so that the passing by destroyer will know that the house is protected? Or do they put it on the inside so they know that they are protected? Which side? And we never really know or hear their decision. Which side of the doorway is the most protected and most important one? We ask the question of each other because we're all gathered in the same doorway. Yours is mine. Mine is yours. We are all together, one frame within which we are all photographed. And we've lost something about the culture of giving and facing. I want to say confronting, but that just means confronting, two people fronting each other. It doesn't necessarily mean bad. But when someone comes to the door, how do we respond? If someone is needy, how do we respond? I know how we respond. We ignore the doorbell because we assume now that it's the Instacart fairy. We assume now that it's the UPS truck. We assume now that it's someone who is bringing something to us who does not expect to be greeted. And Sabina, who's much better at this than I am and more mobile at the moment, she will walk to the front door after a discrete time and yell out, "Thank you," but all she sees maybe is a masked person pulling away with a hearty hi-ho silver, or maybe not. Maybe she doesn't even see that. But the culture of actually giving and standing face to face and rolling down the window when somebody on the corner wants water on a hot day. What do we do now? Now, how do we do it? Well, standing there in the doorway with us is the Babylonian sage Mar Ukba and his wife. And since standing in the doorway, I can be anybody I want to be and be everybody at the same time, I prefer to be his wife, who is waiting for him at home. And I'm anxious. He's always home by now. How could he not be home by now? Maybe he's embroiled at the Beit Midrash in some kind of argument that he can't leave, because I know those guys, and leaving is to admit defeat. And he doesn't want to turn away from somebody whom he knows will smile in victory behind him. So maybe I ought to go and find him and walk him home and drag him away. Let it be on me. Well, she walked to the door and she walked past the loaf of bread that she had just taken out of the oven that day. A great big loaf of bread that would last for the week. But it already had 5 big pieces taken out of it because she had opened the door and given 5 pieces to beggars who came asking for bread for their family. We'll have enough. We always have plenty, and I always make more than I need, she said, as she covered it with an oilcloth in order to keep the flies away. And then, leaving the bread covered and protected, she went out the door. Very rarely going out the door, she went to find Mar Ukba and went the basic route that he would take, the quickest route to the Beit Midrash, walking past houses. I don't even know these houses. I don't even think I've seen them. Is it true that I live my entire life inside the house? She said to herself, starting to become a bit resentful of that, but also understanding that opening the door and giving to the poor was exactly what she wanted to be doing. Even assessing their needs, I find exciting. Even the ones who seem like they really don't need, after all. They just want. How am I supposed to know? How am I supposed to decide? This is the stress of standing in the kitchen. This is the heat of the fire after the fire has abated. This is my own internal machloket, disagreement, as among the sages. I have my own rules, but I need to employ them as I look this one in the face and that one in the face. Looking them in the face, that's where the rules are hammered out. That's where the decisions are made. She went to the Beit Midrash and found him, and he took her on an errand that he runs normally. We go by the house of the poor, of a poor man. And she watched as he then reached into his pocket and took out 4 tiny coins and threw them into the threshold. And there they clacked around, clacked around, clacked around. Apparently, he does this all the time, she thought. This is a routine. And sure enough, do you do this all the time? Every 3 days, I do it, he said. And then I walk quickly away, lest he see me. Why do you care if he sees you? Well, I care if he sees me because I don't want to look into the face of somebody to whom I've given money. That would be a self-aggrandizement. I don't want to see it. And I don't want him to see me and feel indebted to me if he sees me in the street. She didn't quite understand, but this time, the poor person in the house had anticipated the arrival, the regular arrival of his benefactor, and wanted so much to open the door. And so he opened the door. And as the door opened, Mar Ukba, scandalized by the possibility that he would be seen, grabbed his wife by the hand, also a scandal, and ran down the street and ran into the very fireplace where she had the big communal oven where she had cooked the bread. And the stones were still hot. And there they hid from the stranger who didn't follow them so far. Why did he have to run? And why did he have to implicate me? He would have been happy to see my husband, and I would have been happy to see him. I could see the beginning of gratitude as he started to open the door. All he wanted to do was say thanks. But no, not for my husband. My husband would have seen it as being a terror, would have seen it as being terrible. And there they stood on the hot stones of the newly swept communal oven. Mar Ukba couldn't stand very long. His feet started to burn. But she said, well, I understand he can't stand the oven. Maybe you should stand on my feet, she said. And he did. He put his feet on hers, and he was saved. His feet were insulated from the fire by hers. Are her gifts really superior to mine and the great mighty Beit Midrash? He thought to himself, but his look did not escape his attentive wife. And she said, you know, my gifts are straightforward. They have immediate benefit, and yours don't. And I can stand the heat of the kitchen, and you've never learned to. That's the thing with the way that you and your colleagues give. They oil the machinery of the society, to be sure. But you lose something, dear husband. You lose something. You lose sight of who you're giving to. You give to something anonymous. You shout, thank you, over your shoulder after the door is closed and the person well distanced. Don't lose that. We can't lose it. If your way of giving is good, my way of giving is also good, and maybe even better. In any event, we can't lose it. I tell you the story at some length, but it's over now. I tell you the story that is really only a few sentences in the Talmud, and I embellish it. I embellish it because we stand in the doorway with Mar Ukba and his wife, and we don't know how to open it, when to close it, when to greet, how to decide, how to determine the need in somebody's face. And during times of pandemic, one of the features of our life is that protecting ourselves, we lose it. We can't afford to lose it. We have to find a way to use it. Who are the people to whom you will open your doors easily? Open your doors to them. Offer a gift. Offer time. Be, whether you're a male or a female, whether you haven't decided whether you're a male or a female, be, in the words of this story, Mar Ukba's wife. We need heroes like her. She's the one who makes us hear it, who makes us understand that there's an insistence here. The giving of the Beit Midrash, the coin, the economy of society is important to give. But the coin, the economy of the household, the look, the compassion, the confrontation, the attention face to face is just as important and maybe more world building. Mar Ukba's wife is given no name. Give her a name. The Talmud doesn't know to name her, but we do. Whether you're a male or a female or undecided as to your gender, give her a name. Make her a hero. Let her join you in the doorway in this pandemic times. Always keep in mind what side of the door we have to paint. Which one is the more important, the more dangerous, the more crucial? Perhaps both are, now and also then. Remember that all the generations are crowded into the doorway. Remember that paying attention to the mezuzah and to the doorway is a way of saying, I am paying attention to the yichud of the world, to the oneness of the world, and all of the possibilities and all of the relationships. All of that which supports us, sustains us, and ultimately saves us. Shana Tova.